This is a picture of what the hospital looked like in its early days. The center section there that kind of bumps out, that is where the library is today and where the original entrance to the hospital was in 1924. The facade to the left of that, with the pointed roof, that is the facade that you see in the maternity tower. And then the pointed roof to the right is where the Simon family tower, where that now comes out of. If you face the backyard, the doors that you see in front of you are the original doors to Riley Hospital. Families would come through those doors and would have to leave their children and were not allowed to go upstairs. If you turn to the picture with the gentleman and the young girl, that is Dr. Green. He was the pediatric chair from 1968 to 1988, and he started what is now known as family-centered care. He believed parents should be at the bedside as much as possible and be a partner in their child's care, a belief that was unconventional at the time. Now, if you turn to the stained glass windows, the glass panels were made by Stuart Carey Glass Company and designed by Thomas Hibben. He was a renowned architect at the time. The top row of windows are based on James Whitcomb Riley's poem, The Circus Parade. The two panes that make up a picture in each section are also based on James Whitcomb Riley's poems. We think the poems are From Left to Right, Our Hired Girl, That Old Sweetheart of Mine, The Fishing Party, Old Swimming Hole, Out to Old Aunt Mary's, and Raggedy Man. The other panes, the artist interviewed children to find out what they liked, and that is what he depicted. The stained glass was brought in from Europe. The picture to the left of the cabinet is Hugh McLandon. He was the first president of the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association from 1921 to 1947. He was a banker, businessman, and philanthropist. Landon was one of the largest donors for the Riley Hospital Building Fund, and his support helped finance the construction of the new Indiana University School of Medicine building, now known as Emerson Hall. The building's opening in 1919 provided desperately needed medical student education during a significant moment in history. To the right of the cabinet is a picture of Perry Lesh, the second president of the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association. During Lesh's years of leadership, he led the 1949 Riley Centennial Fund for Medical Research campaign that raised $1 million for the Riley Research Wing and continued support for research into children's diseases. In 1971, the hospital's first comprehensive newborn intensive care unit opened and needed an ambulance specifically designed for transporting premature infants. Lesh ensured the association provided the finances necessary to accomplish this. The cabinet that you see here is the donation cabinet. It holds all the original records of those people that donated money to build the hospital. On the two doors of the cabinet are two brass plaques that are inscribed. On the left side, herein is perpetuated the record of the gifts which made possible this hospital. On the right side, the plaque says that remembrance of those whose generosity provided for childhood the service of physician and surgeon may endure. On the floor, facing the stained glass windows, are the incorporators of the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association. The first person on the plaque is George Ade. He was an author during the Indiana Golden Age of literature, which James Whitcomb Riley was also a part. Frank C. Ball was the fourth eldest Ball brother. He invented the world's first semi-automatic glass machine, served as the Ball Brothers Company president for 63 years, and was an active member of the Muncie community. Henry W. Bennett was an Indianapolis Foundation trustee for 20 years. William C. Bobbs was the president of the publishing company Bobbs Merrill Company until 1926. His name was included in the company name in 1903. One of the authors that helped the company become a national publisher was James Whitcomb Riley. Arthur V. Brown served as head of Indiana National Bank and the Union Trust Company. In 1939, he was given the Staff of Honor by the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, declaring that virtually all the welfare agencies of the city have been the beneficiaries of his liberality and his untiring and devoted services. He was treasurer of the James Whitcomb Riley Hospital for Crippled Children and chairman of the trustees of Methodist Hospital for over 19 years. Charles E. Coffin, he was a banker, real estate, and insurance man. He was also a member of the park board and had a golf course named after him. Fred C. Dixon was president of Indiana Trust Company. He was a prominent businessman, civic leader, and philanthropist. James W. Fessler was an attorney and member of the IU Board of Trustees from 1902 to 1936. He served as vice president of the board for 3 years and president for 17 years. A laboratory science building in Indianapolis is named for him. William Fortune. Fortune started as a journalist. He was instrumental in organizing the Commerce Club, which became the Chamber of Commerce. He purchased the Lockerbie home after Riley's death and held it until the Memorial Association could take it over. He also donated a tract of land for the Veterans Hospital. William Pirtle Harrod. Harrod served as a district chairman of the Military Training Camp Association during World War I. He was an attorney with his father in the firm Harrod and Harrod. Later, he became the general counsel for Grain Dealers Mutual Insurance Association. George C. Hitt served as United States Vice Consul General in London under President Benjamin Harrison in the newspaper business for over 30 years. He was the first person to recognize James Whitcomb Riley's talent as a poet. He was the first to publish a group of Riley's poems. Hitt was a close friend of the poet. Hewitt H. Holland. Holland was an editor and literary advisor for Bobbs Merrill Publishing Company in Indianapolis for 25 years before moving on to Century Magazine as editor for 6 years. He edited and compiled the Hoosier Book of Riley verse. Lewis C. Hessman was the founder, president, and general manager of Central Supply Company. In addition to serving on the executive committee for the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association, he was also one of the incorporators of the association. He also has a stained glass window with his name. Hugh McLandon. He was the first president of the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association from 1921 to 1947. He was a banker, businessman, and philanthropist. Landon was one of the largest donors for the Riley Hospital Building Fund, and his support helped finance the construction of the new Indiana University School of Medicine building, now known as Emerson Hall. The building's opening in 1919 provided desperately needed medical student education during a significant moment in history. Josiah K. Lilly. Lilly was the son of Colonel Eli Lilly, was president of Eli Lilly Company from 1898 to 1932. He was succeeded by his son as president while he became chairman of the board of directors. Carlton B. McCullough, M.D. He was a doctor and politician. He served as a doctor in World War I at Base Hospital 32 in France. From 1934 to 1948, he was vice president and medical director for State Life Insurance Company of Indianapolis. Meredith Nicholson. Nicholson was a Hoosier author during Indiana's golden age of literature. Nicholson served as U.S. Minister to Paraguay, Venezuela, and Nicaragua to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Lafayette Page, M.D., was an otolaryngologist and professor at the IU School of Medicine. Dr. Page served during World War I at the Colonel Eli Lilly Memorial Red Cross Hospital, also known as United States Army Base Hospital 32. His research and knowledge helped develop an adequate remedy that led to a marked decrease in the serious effect of gas burns and gas poisons on Allied troops. His distinguished service in the treatment of gas cases won him recognition throughout the French and Allied medical services, as well as the American Expeditionary Forces. Dr. Page was also the person that suggested Riley Hospital should be built in memory of James Whitcomb Riley. Frank D. Stalnaker. Stalnaker was president of Capital National Bank for 6 years before it merged with Indiana National Bank, which he was president for 20 years. N. Booth Tarkington was an author and a good friend of James Whitcomb Riley. He won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for literature for The Magnificent Ambersons and Alice Adams. Evans Woolen, Jr. was board chairman of American Fletcher National Bank and Trust Company and was president of the American Bankers Association. He also served as the chairman of the 1957 Indianapolis United Fund. While standing in front of the desk, the plaque on the floor to the left is a plaque for John H. Oliver, M.D. He was the first chair of surgery at IU School of Medicine from 1908 to 1912. While facing the desk, the plaque on the floor to the right is Frank A. Morrison, M.D. He was the first director of the eye clinic at Riley Hospital. He was the chair of the department from 1908 to 1928. In the middle of the old lobby is a large brass cross with 16 pioneers of medicine on it. They are Hippocrates, 460 to 370 BCE, was the father of medicine, understood to be responsible for the Hippocratic corpus, which includes the Hippocratic Oath. Avancia, born in 980 and died in 1037. Iranian Islamic philosopher and physician. His work, The Canon of Medicine, a systematic classification and summary of medical and pharmaceutical knowledge, was used as the preeminent textbook in the Middle East and Europe. The first Latin translation was made in the 12th century, the Hebrew version in 1491, and the Arabic text in 1593, the second text ever printed in Arabic. Galen, born 130, died in 200. Galen was the physician considered as second only to Hippocrates in the development of medicine. His experiments on animals and observations of how the human body functions dominated medical theory and practice for 1400 years. Ambroise Paré, born 1510, died 1590. He was considered to be one of the fathers of modern surgery. He was the designer of the predecessor to modern hemostats. He also designed ocular and limb prosthesis. He also focused on progress in obstetrics. He was known for his compassion in helping others. Andreas Vesalius was born in 1514 and died in 1564. Based on his dissection of human cadavers, Vesalius discovered that previous teachings on human anatomy were based on the dissections of animals. His book, De Humani Corporis Fabrica, became the first anatomical textbook with engraved illustrations. William Harvey, born 1578 to died 1657. He discovered the circulation of the blood and the role of the heart in propelling it. Antoine von Leeuwenhoek, born 1632, died 1723. He was the father of modern microscopy. Thomas Sydenham, born 1624, died 1689. He is especially noted for introducing the use of cinchona bark in the treatment of malaria, differentiating between scarlet fever and measles, and being the first to describe accurately chorea and gout. Wilhelm Röntgen, born 1845, died 1923. He was a German physicist and Nobel laureate in physics who produced and detected an electromagnetic radiation wavelength he called X-rays. William Beaumont, born 1785, died 1853. He was noted for his discoveries of the physiology of digestion. His discoveries came about due to a trapper, Alexis St. Martin, who had a gunshot wound to the stomach. The wound healed outside of the body and was covered by a flap of skin, allowing Beaumont to observe digestion and obtain gastric samples that he sent to other doctors throughout the world. Walter Reed, born 1851, died 1902. He was a U.S. Army surgeon who proved that yellow fever, malaria, was transmitted by mosquitoes, not by human contact. A U.S. Army hospital in Washington, D.C. bears his name. Crawford Long, born 1815, died 1878. He performed the first surgery with ether in 1842. Rudolf Virchow, born 1821, died 1902, was known as the founder of cellular pathology. William Jenner, born 1815, died 1898. He was an English physician, primarily known for discovering the difference between typhus and typhoid. Louis Pasteur, born 1822, died 1895. Pasteur was best known for his work in bacteriology, a field that he virtually founded. His discoveries contributed greatly to the control and treatment of cholera, diphtheria, tetanus, tuberculosis, and other diseases. His studies of the transmission of infection also contributed to the development of aseptic procedures in surgery. His discovery of vaccines to prevent anthrax and other diseases of animals had an enormous impact, not only in France but also worldwide. The term pasteurization is named after Louis Pasteur for his work in determining how to preserve foods. Robert Koch, born 1843, died 1910. Koch proved that specific microorganisms cause specific diseases. He identified the bacterium that causes cholera, which eliminated the disease in the Western world. He also isolated the causative agent of tuberculosis and discovered the reproductive cycle of anthrax, therefore eliminating that disease. The plaque on the floor in the alcove where the clock is has the inscription, "Friendly hands have placed this tablet as an enduring tribute to William C. Bobs, James W. Fessler, Louis C. Hessman, and Hugh McLandon, who besides many other gifts and labors, pledged their fortunes in a time of emergency in order that this hospital might become a reality." 1939. The clock was given in memory of Mr. and Mrs. A. Fendrick. They owned a restaurant in the Traction Terminal building. There are several stories about the clock, but the one I like the best is that they took the pendulum out because the children upstairs were kept awake by the clock striking. The brass plaque on the floor in the entrance of the old lobby has the inscription, "That they may have life and may have it abundantly." The Memorial Association plaque in the vestibule of the hospital has inscribed, "This hospital was planned and built under the supervision and direction of the following joint committee of the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association and the Board of Trustees of Indiana University, and represents the individual gifts of more than 45,000 donors." Hugh McLandon, president, was the first president of the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association from 1921 to 1947. He was a banker, businessman, and philanthropist. Landon was one of the largest donors for the Riley Hospital Building Fund, and his support helped finance the construction of the new Indiana University School of Medicine building, now known as Emerson Hall. The building's opening in 1919 provided desperately needed medical student education during a significant moment in history. William Lowe Bryan was president of Indiana University. He was Indiana University's 10th president. He was president for 35 years. Before that, he served as vice president for 9 years. He earned his Ph.D. in psychology. He helped organize the American Psychological Association. His most notable accomplishment was the expansion of graduate and professional training. During his administration, schools of medicine, education, nursing, business, music, and dentistry were established. George A. Ball. The Ball family has been famous for both its financial and philanthropic generosity. The family began their philanthropic relationship with the IUPUI campus in 1925, when they funded the construction of Ball Residence Hall as a home for the nurses of Riley Hospital and the Indiana University Training School for Nurses. George was the youngest of 5 brothers. The brothers owned the Ball Glass Manufacturing Company in Muncie, Indiana. Benjamin F. Long was a trustee of Indiana University from 1915 to 1935 and served as president for many years. He was an attorney by profession. Judge Ira Coleman Batman was the person who prepared the resolution and drew up the agreement that allowed the Joint Executive Committee to come to fruition. Dr. C.B. McCulloch. He was a doctor and politician. He served as a doctor in World War I at Base Hospital 32 in France. From 1934 to 1948, he was vice president and medical director for State Life Insurance Company of Indianapolis. William C. Bobbs was the president of the publishing company Bobbs Merrill Company until 1926. His name was included in the company name in 1903. One of the authors that helped the company become a national publisher was James Whitcomb Riley. Dr. Lafayette Page. He was an otolaryngologist and professor at the IU School of Medicine. He also suggested Riley Hospital should be built in memory of James Whitcomb Riley. Dr. Page served during World War I at the Colonel Eli Lilly Memorial Red Cross Hospital, also known as the United States Army Base Hospital 32. His research and knowledge helped develop an adequate remedy that led to a marked decrease in the serious effect of gas burns and gas poisons on Allied troops. His distinguished service in the treatment of gas cases won him recognition throughout the French and Allied medical services, as well as the American Expeditionary Forces. James W. Fessler was an attorney and member of the IU Board of Trustees from 1902 to 1936. He served as vice president of the board for 3 years and president for 17 years. A laboratory science building in Indianapolis is named for him. Dr. Samuel E. Smith. Dr. Smith was medical provost of Indiana University. He was the general superintendent in charge of Riley Hospital when it first opened. He was provost for 5 years and vice president of the Indiana University Board of Trustees for 6 years. He was considered an authority on mental illness. Louis C. Hussman. He was the founder, president, and general manager of Central Supply Company. In addition to serving on the executive committee for the James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association, he was also one of the incorporators of the association. He also has a stained glass window with his name in the original lobby of the hospital. Arthur V. Brown was an attorney and banker. He served as vice president of Union Trust Company for 1 year and president for 26 years. He was also a board member of Indiana Methodist Hospital for 20 years. He was treasurer of James Whitcomb Riley Memorial Association. James W. Carr. In 1937, James W. Carr resigned his position as secretary for the Chamber of Commerce to devote all his time to the position of secretary of the Joint Executive Committee of the James Whitcomb Riley Hospital and the Riley Memorial Association. Carr had been secretary of the association since 1922. As you walk into the original entrance of the hospital, on the left-hand side is the Jesse Spalding plaque. Jesse was active in the development and planning of Riley Hospital. The hospital was originally for patients that could not afford medical care, so Jesse organized a large group of seamstresses to make clothing for the patients. She also directed a campaign for x-ray equipment, which raised $6,000. She made 2 donations to the hospital, one of $30,000 and another of $50,000. Jesse also donated $10,000 to be used as a linen fund for patients at Riley. In addition, Jesse requested that the proceeds of the sale of the Oldfields estate, valued at the time at $250,000, be used at Riley Hospital for research and educational work. Jesse was the wife of Hugh McKinnon Landon, the first president of the Riley Memorial Association. In the alcove to the left of the original entrance is a picture of James Whitcomb Riley. He was well known for his poems about nature, Indiana, and childhood in the late 1880s. He was famously known as the Hoosier Poet. When he passed away, many of his friends developed what is now known as the Riley Children's Foundation. They built Riley Hospital to honor their friend, James Whitcomb Riley. On the wall to the right of James Whitcomb Riley's portrait is a prayer that James Whitcomb Riley wrote called The Prayer Perfect.